Hello and welcome to We Turned Out Okay. This is episode 300 of the show that helps you change your child's behavior from bad to good, feel happy inside, and truly enjoy your family time. I am Karen Locke Kolp. I am a child development expert, and I have got a combined 15 years, almost 15 years, it'll be 15 years in January, of time directly helping parents and their kids. And I have a website called WeTurnedOutOK.com, and I host this podcast, and I'm so excited to be celebrating episode 300. To do this today, I have got two of my favorite people in the entire world and my favorite early childhood education type people. I would like to introduce, well, you've heard her before, Tricia Tomaso, who has now been a special needs preschool teacher for how many years?
Almost 30.
Almost 30. So when I was a young preschool teacher, we started working together. And Janine Halloran, who is our sponsor, and because she creates awesome things, and she's also an expert at helping kids develop coping skills, a licensed mental health counselor. Welcome, Janine.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be back.
Yay. And welcome, Tricia. So glad to have you.
Great
I did
to be
say
here.
Your name, right? Did I say that you were Tricia Tomaso?
Yes, I'm pretty sure you did.
Okay, that's good.
I think you did, yes.
Cool. Well, I mean, listeners are very familiar with both of your voices. You've been on the show multiple times. Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad that you get to be here today for episode 300.
Thank you for having me.
So we've got a good plan. I'm excited about the plan. We're going to do a roundtable, which is one of my favorite things to do, where each of us has brought a sort of issue, a thing that we wanted to talk about that we thought parents of young children really needed to hear about. And then we're going to take a break. And then after that, we are going to answer some listener questions. So, all right. So if you're ready to get started, I'm ready.
Yeah, let's do
That's
this.
good. All right, woohoo! So I asked each of you to come up with just a topic that you thought that people sort of would benefit from knowing about if they've got little kids, and it turns out that the topics that you chose are very, very similar. So I'm gonna ask Tricia if you would go first.
Sure.
What's your topic?
So I'm going to talk about social emotional learning. So there's a recent trend in the public schools. I don't know about every state, but Massachusetts has developed standards to add to the frameworks for social emotional learning. And research has shown that social emotional learning is at the root of all education, that it goes hand in hand with academics. And you can, excel at reading, math, or whatever, but if you don't have the social skills, such as there are 5 competencies for social emotional learning, like social awareness, relationship skills, self-awareness, self-management, those types of things, to be able to utilize the academic skills that children have gained throughout life. That this is a very important thing to be focusing on and integrating it into all areas of education. So social emotional learning goes on through reading, reading class, art class, everywhere the child goes during the school day. So it's very important. And I'm just going to give you a little definition of what is social emotional learning. Social emotional learning is the process through which children and adults understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, and establish and maintain positive relationships and make responsible decisions. So those are very important skills.
That's a lot.
And it shows that research shows that children that have had, training in social emotional learning at home and at school are more successful in life, in their family life, their professional life, and also in their educational career. So I talked a little bit about the competencies, and I took a course this summer on how to engage children and how to get social emotional learning more integrated into our curriculum, and also looking for what families can do. So I have some everyday strategies for families to promote social emotional learning. So let's see. Talk about feelings. Read stories that lead to social discussions. Ask open-ended questions to solve problems. Model appropriate management skills. Play interactive games, board games, turn-taking games. Discuss consequences of our words and our actions. Have family time that is unplugged. And volunteer to help others as a family. So these are all things that,
Wow.
many of you are already doing, but just do it in a, a more focused way and thinking about how important this is to your child's development.
So two things really come up for me in there from that list of like what you can do. One is turn taking. Like I think that Janine is nodding.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, like I think we don't see that. Can you see parents, Janine, not thinking of that as a skill, quote unquote?
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely. I just met with a child last night, and one of the things we do is we play Exploding Kittens. I see him.
oh my God, I love that game.
I see him for individual therapy. And I said to the mom, I've noticed a difference in how he is understanding different people's perspectives, how he's treating me differently in the game just by playing with him. I've played this game with him several times over several sessions, and it looks just like we're playing, like we're just having a good time, we're having a conversation. But the way he played with me yesterday showed me that he has an ability to take my perspective now. He doesn't want me to necessarily get the exploding kitten. So when he's rearranging the cards, he's not doing it to get at me. He's doing it as a support to me. So he's like, I don't want you to get it. I don't want you to feel bad if you explode. I'm like, I've got a diffuse card, buddy. I'm good. So
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it is really important. And to know, many families engage in these activities, but not realizing how very important it really is,
Yeah.
to let children know that everybody has feelings.
right.
Your feelings are okay,
Yes.
but there are ways to manage them that are more appropriate than others, and that understanding how your actions and words make other people feel and taking that perspective is very important throughout life.
Absolutely.
It is.
I have been, I just want to interject. I've been completely obsessed with the Inspector Gamache novels. I don't know if you've ever heard of Inspector Gamache. So, he's the creation of a woman named Louise Penny, who is Canadian from Montreal, which is, I'm Canadian from Montreal. Well, I've become a naturalized citizen, but of the U.S. But I grew up going back and forth to Montreal all the time. We always used to go through these places called the Eastern Townships, and there is a village that's in Louise Penny's world. There's a village called Three Pines, and all of Chief Inspector Gamache's like cases seem to sort of relate in some way to Three Pines. And there's now, I think, 13 of these novels. And he is the chief inspector of homicide for a reason, right? Like of the whole state or the whole province of Quebec. And it's because he believes and teaches that and solves cases based on, he will say, a murder happened because of a feeling. Murders happen because people felt slighted or felt afraid or felt protective or felt something. Like there's all these different reasons. And every time he says that in a book, so he'll talk about that, and he'll talk about like the four parts of their compass is for these agents to be able to say, I need help. I'm sorry. I don't understand. And I think maybe I don't know. There are like four things like that because I think somebody going into policing would be like, well, I'm in charge here. You know what I mean? Like, let me get out of my way while I solve this crime. And he's like, no. It's the exact opposite of that. And it all comes from like empathy and just being able to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And I don't know that it was an entirely good example to bring up Chief Inspector Gamache, but every time I read,
no, it is. I understand your point that
because everything comes from
I
feelings.
think many are, growing up with more of a focus on just the academics, like in schools, and that don't know how to cope with life. What's thrown at you at life is not always, easy.
Yeah.
And we need to know how to manage our feelings. And we have, an increasing number of, children and adults with anxiety issues. So we need to know how to manage our feelings, what these feelings mean, and what we can do to help ourselves. And
I would love
absolutely
to hear from both of you on this. How does anxiety and social emotional learning connect? Like, where do they intersect for you guys?
Well, I feel like, at my level, the preschool level, my social emotional learning curriculum is focusing right now on understanding your feelings and how that makes your body feel. So we just, actually, I wanted to mention, when you brought up an author, I recently discovered through my coursework, this author is Todd Parr, and he writes these beautifully colored, illustrated books with very simple language, very appropriate for my age level that I teach. And we just read one yesterday called The Don't Worry Book.
Oh,
and he's written many books about feelings, making good decisions, all of the things that are, focusing on those social emotional learning competencies and standards. The Don't Worry Book. So, then I had all of my students talk about something that they worry about. But there were strategies in the book too, like very simple things like take a breath, take a walk, draw a picture, tell an adult, something like that. So I've just fallen in love with this author. Like you said, it's just all of us, and I had to buy all of his books, most of them. There's a new one coming out next week. It's called The Kindness Book.
Oh, wow.
And that's really important too.
That's really cool.
Promoting kindness and understanding others and empathy. And so that's, but at the anxiety, I think, children need to start at a really early age, because the anxiety is coming out in them at a very young age.
Yes, it is.
So, and sometimes displayed in inappropriate behavior or physical symptoms, tummy aches, headaches,
right,
that kind of thing. So I think if they know that feelings, so the Don't Worry book we read about, and how your feelings can make your body feel sick.
Right.
You can have a tummy ache, and it might be that you're worried, you're breathing heavy, or your heart might be racing.
Right.
And all of those, you can feel your emotions in your body.
Yep.
Yeah. So learning how your body reacts and what that means, and how to have an impact on it and calm yourself down. So calm down strategies. I also have a book that's called B is for Breathe, and there's a...
Oh, I love that book.
I can't remember the author at this moment, but...
I can't either, but it's an incredible book.
Yes, and there's
all of these, by the way, if you're listening, are going to be in the links.
There's a coping strategy for every letter of the alphabet.
Yes, absolutely.
And it says how to deal with fussy and frustrated feelings. And B is for Breathe. And that one is amazing, too. Just simple things, and so that they have some control over it. I think you're learning about how you feel, but also learning how to control how it impacts your body and your life and your behavior.
Yeah.
I think
it's self-management.
It's so interesting, because this is why I started my company. It's called Coping Skills for Kids on purpose, to help kids deal with their emotions, deal with their anxiety. And I do see a lot of teenagers who are struggling with anxiety. And I think that completely relates to social and emotional learning, because one of the things is they don't know how to manage their stress. They don't know how to manage when they get overwhelmed and anxious in the middle of the school day. They have no way. They have not been able to identify, this is a strategy I can use. If they had B as for Breathe when they were little, maybe they could go lean back on that.
I literally just taught one of my kids a strategy that Maureen Healy talks about. I'm going to link to her in the show notes. Our episode, she came on the show. Dr. Maureen Healy, she has a book called The Emotionally Healthy Child, I think. And she's got a strategy in there called bubble breathing. And before a really stressful kind of event that was taking place for one of my kids, I don't have permission to talk about this, so I'm not going to identify him, but the way that you breathe is you sort of envision your breath coming down into your belly, and then the next breath that you take, you expand it out, so now it's surrounding your body, and you go out until you're surrounding the people that you love, your home, your neighborhood, and every breath it's deeper and deeper. And I'm watching him as I'm doing this exercise with him. I'm watching him literally taking deeper and deeper breaths. And as a result, relaxing more and then exhaling, you know what I mean? And feeling so good about it. So I also wanted to mention Dr. Laura Markham, who's been on the show, and I will link to her episode in the show notes.
Incredible.
She talks a lot about feelings not just happening in your head. Like we talk about, it felt like a gut punch, or like when we were in love, we talk about our heart has to do with love, and our feelings don't just happen in our head, they happen in our bodies as well. And I feel like I interrupted you. Did you have anything else? Like what else did you want to say about anxiety and...
Just that it's getting so much more prevalent these days. I speak to teachers a lot, actually. And every time I ask them, I go out and I speak to, groups of 75, 100 teachers. And I say, how many of you have seen an anxious child in your classroom? Every single one of them raises their hand. It is incredible. And it's something we need to tackle because it's what's happening in our classrooms. This is what our teachers are having to sort of learn to manage on the fly. And without enough school counselors in the building, that kind of thing. So it's one of those things. It is a problem. The kids that I see are anxious.
And that's one of the reasons why the social emotional learning is so important starting in preschool.
Absolutely.
At home, preschool years. Starting right from the beginning of their schooling, because and to empower children to be able to understand what's happening to their bodies and their feelings, and giving them some strategies. And
would you say that you see anxious preschoolers, Tricia?
Yes, all the time.
I spoke to a preschool audience in Texas this summer. Absolutely, all of them raised their hand too.
Oh my goodness!
I'm not kidding. It is alarming.
Wow. I mean, you think of older kids or adults feeling anxious, right?
I see it more and more in younger children, preschoolers that I work with. And
it seems like, because Janine, this was part of your topic too. Like, I'd love to kind of move on to, the next sort of step in our roundtable, which is also about social emotional learning. But what's kind of blowing my mind here is that it's so connected with everything.
Right.
It is. There's a whole societal trend.
And do you think
so many things impacting it? I think it's hard to sort out why this is happening and why in younger children.
Well, I was just going to ask, do you think it comes from like we have ignored these things for too? So I recently, I think over the summer, I read this tweet that I thought was absolutely hilarious, and I hope I don't screw it up. It said something like 2000, like the year 2000, study STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. The humanities are useless. 2005, study STEM, the humanities are worthless. 2015, study STEM, the humanities are worthless. 2019, our democracy is in crisis for some reason. Right? Like, if you ignore these basic things,
right?
I feel like we're now seeing that a little bit.
Yep. And I think there comes a point where you have to think, okay, so where can we get back to basics? Can we get back to what kids really need? And why is it this focus on test scores? And why is it this focus on having to go to all the after school activities and opportunities that kids have to be going someplace every day after school? To your point of, can we have some unplugged time as a family? That's incredible. But to do that as a family, as a person, and as a member of a family, you have to really be intentional to not schedule your child for a bunch of things after school.
Yeah.
And allowing them to have time for unstructured play.
Right.
Let them play. Let them direct their own play. Let them play outside. In nature. And that's how most of learning happens.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And we don't allow that. Even the little ones are going to do soccer, and don't get me wrong, they're adorable, but do 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds need to have something every day after?
And does it need to be so structured?
Right.
Getting them together to play is one thing, right?
Right.
So what did you come here with to talk about? Sorry.
Before we go on, I have one more thing.
All right.
I wanted to end with this because, the social emotional learning concept is not a new one. I have a quote from Aristotle.
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
Okay. Educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So both of my boys have studied the humanities for a couple of years, and like when people find out that Jay at 15 or 14 was reading the Bhagavad Gita, was reading there's a, I think it's called Socrates Dialogues. And I think if I have this right, I think it's Aristotle who wrote down Socrates' words, or it could be the other way around. I can't remember, but anyway, he talks about, and Jay has read both of the kids have read the Odyssey. Jay really got into that and the Iliad, and these are stories that have been told for so long, and they're about, like one of them, I think it's the Iliad. It's the Iliad is about the war. The Odyssey is about how a soldier returns to normal life. Like that's the whole overarching thing. And so even, so long ago, people were wrestling with those ideas. And when I put that tweet on the board about, study STEM, the humanities are worthless, I remember Jay just seeing it. I saw it on the fridge and he was like, oh my God, that is so true. Like no one thinks about the humanities. And yet if we don't have that, everything else just falls apart. Everything else is worthless. So
True.
yeah. Thank you for that. That's amazing. All right. What you got, Janine?
So I watched a documentary recently, and it just really spoke to me. So one of the things I like to do at night is sort of rest and relax and watch something. And I started watching Won't You Be My Neighbor, the Fred Rogers documentary. And I got about 15 minutes in, and I thought, I have to stop this right now because I'm going to want to take notes on this. And I'm going to want to talk about it with somebody and share it with my audience because it's so powerful. He was so incredible in terms of focusing on feelings and emotions.
Amazing man.
And
he really,
I mean, this documentary blew me away. I cried at the end, but I cried everything. So.
I saw it too, and I got emotional about it too.
I read the book. I read the biography of Fred Rogers by
What an
Maxwell
incredible
King,
man.
and I totally was crying by the end of it. It's
Right.
what an incredible man.
It's so powerful, but what I loved about it was that he talks so much about social and emotional learning for kids. He didn't call it that. He had great quotes like, feelings are mentionable and manageable. So we're talking about it. You need to talk about your feelings. You need to label your feelings, and then you need to be able to manage your feelings. And that's really what it comes down to. I grew up watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It was really fun. And then being an adult looking back on it, he tackled some really challenging things. He talked about segregation with little kids.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have thought that. He talked about war. These are big topics, but he did it in a way that made it okay for kids to talk about. And it took away the stigma of being able to say, I'm scared about this.
Yeah.
I'm worried about this. This is a big thing that's happening in our world right now. What can I do? How can I manage it? And even songs that he would come up with. What do you do with the mad that you feel? That came from a kid. A kid said that to him. And so he came up with a whole song for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I read this in the book, that he was a pianist first. Like he studied piano like for years in college. And then he, then I think that next he became an ordained minister. And then he spent like the last, 4 decades of his life or something studying human development and child development.
Right.
And with people like
Erickson,
T. Barry Brazelton,
Right.
People like who he wanted to really understand what would help the kids. And so in the book, I read this thing that I still think about. A friend of his I believe a friend of his is an eye doctor. Either that or he was playing an eye doctor, but I think his friend was a real eye doctor. So on the show, what they did was they go to the eye doctor. Fred Rogers gets an exam of his eyes. And he was a genius at inserting himself into a child's mind and then thinking, what would a child wonder about, worry about, feel insecure about? And so he's sitting in this ophthalmologist's chair and he says to the ophthalmologist, can you see what I'm thinking? And like... And the ophthalmologist is like, oh my God, I would never have thought of that. But a kid, you could totally see a kid thinking that. So like to kids, our reality isn't their reality. They like exist in a magical reality all the time. There really could be monsters out that window.
Right.
And he had such an understanding
of that. Yeah.
He could go right back to childhood. It was
Yes.
incredible. And he had this amazingly rich pretend play world. He was sick a lot, so he did a lot of pretending and imagining when he was a kid. So I think that actually helped him be able to continue to look through the lens of what he's doing as through a child's eyes, which is incredible.
And Erickson too. Eric Erickson comes up in the second book in the Your Child Explained series, which is called Educating Happy Kids. I was like, why? I was like, who is Eric Erickson? Let me just go and find out about him. So Eric Erickson was born to a wealthy Dutch woman. He was born out of wedlock, and she basically left the Netherlands when she had him because there's a whole shame of having a child out of wedlock. No one knows who his biological father is, and they lived in a Jewish part of a city in Germany, and I'm blanking on exactly where, but he looked like a big blonde Dutch kid, and he didn't ever feel at home with the Jewish kids who made fun of him for being Dutch, and he didn't ever feel at home with the sort of Dutch kids or non-Jewish people, I guess, who he didn't feel like he fit anywhere. Everybody made fun of him. And this is the guy who gave us the tools that we still use today. He's the guy who figured out that a baby needs to understand, can I trust my caregivers to do what I need them to do? A toddler needs to be able to take steps towards independence, but still not feel guilty or in trouble if they do. Like, I think it's no surprise to me, having learned about Erickson's life, that this is the guy who came up with these ideas. Isn't that cool?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah,
And they all have to do, when you think about it, with social and emotional learning.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
And the thing that I also love about Won't You Be My Neighbor and what Fred Rogers did is he talked about the importance of recognizing that a child's feelings are just as big as an adult's feelings. It doesn't, just because they're little doesn't mean their feelings aren't big, that they don't feel stress, that they don't feel anxiety, that they don't feel worry. It's some things are scary. And if you feel scared, there's a chance your kid feels scared. And that's just something that we have to start to recognize and talk about. And, you have to name it to tame it, Dr. Siegel, you really, and it's one of the biggest, most powerful things is to be able to talk about your feelings and then to come up with ways to manage it.
And I think it's really important for, the trusting adults in their lives to validate their feelings.
Right.
Even though to
validate the child's feelings.
Validate your child's feelings.
Right.
Or your students. Even though you might not understand why they're feeling that way, or like you said, every feeling is a big, could be a big feeling. It's just not a feeling that we would have about that particular situation. But to validate it, I can see that you feel this way, and how
really
can I help
important.
you?
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, is how would we relate all of this to like a practical level for a parent who's got a child in front of them who is, because I think a lot of times a parent's instinct might be to say, oh, you don't have to worry.
Yeah,
you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, you're
That's
fine.
not what you
Nothing's
should feel.
going to happen. Stop crying. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Instead of,
Go there.
I
So
can see you're upset. You're crying. Tell me about what you're feeling.
What does it do? What do both of those do to a child? Like, if you say to a child, stop crying, you're fine. What does that do in their brain? Tricia?
Well, I feel that it says that they're doing something wrong.
Right.
That I'm not supposed to be feeling this way, or some shame or guilt about it. Like,
I shouldn't do this.
I shouldn't do this.
But I am.
But the reality is I am feeling this
Right.
way.
Yeah.
So I think for them to know that people, they recognize how you're feeling. They understand that everybody has feelings, and everybody's feelings could be different about one situation.
Yeah.
And that it's okay.
And so to say to a child, I understand what you're feeling, and I feel that way too sometimes, and it's okay. You can talk to me.
It's okay. Everybody feels worried sometimes.
What's happening in that kid's mind when something like, I would love to hear both of your inputs on this.
I think they feel heard. They feel valued. They feel like somebody is listening to what they're saying. They're not being told it's not real or that's not what you should be feeling. It's what they're feeling.
Yeah.
So they feel understood, even if you don't really get why they might be feeling that way. Like that's not maybe what you would feel in that situation, but to be able to go there with them and say, "Oh, I hear you. I see you. I get you."
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
You're accepted as
Right.
the way you are.
Exactly.
Your feelings are your own, and I see them, and I want to help you try to solve a problem or figure out why you're feeling this way. Or
Does it feel frustrating to you guys that you have to go about it along that route?
As a therapist, sometimes it is really
Yeah,
frustrating.
I feel like as a parent as well. So I had Jay on the show one time. I will link to that Jay's episode because we talked about he used to live in this very room. Like his bed was here. He had a loft bed, and his windows look out onto the forest. And most of the time he loved that, but some of the time it scared the bejabbers out of him. And we talk about it in this episode because what I remember from that time is basically we made him a bunch of pictures, and we talked about how like the Greek gods protect Jay, like because he was really into the Greek gods.
so
and
cute.
so we had like this little trident and like lightning bolts and stuff like that. And Max made him one that said like that it was like the Ghostbuster symbol, basically like a zombie with a line through it kind of a thing, like to say these things are here, but these things aren't allowed in this room. Not these things don't exist and it's all in your head, but these things are, they're valid to think about. But Jay remembers it as like he remembers feeling at least a little bit jollied along in terms of like, oh, you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. And when I heard that from him, I mean, I nobody would see this because it was an audio show, but I blushed. I was like, oh my God, my kid felt like that for like what, even if it was just 1 second. I would never ever want that. And then it just made me, I think the reason I'm still loving this podcast after 300 episodes is because feels like an unanswered question, an unanswerable maybe question, but I'm still questing for the answer, which is like, why do we have to go through it that way? Why can't my kid, when I say to them, you are okay, this is fine, why doesn't that work? You know what I mean?
Because they're not there yet.
Yeah.
They've got, their brains are still developing. They're experiencing some of these feelings for the first time, or like it's
Yeah.
really new to them. Anxiety is really scary the first time you feel it. And it continues to be scary. It makes your body feel a certain way. So,
But you know what helps is to know that it's anxiety.
right.
To be able to say, because when I was at my worst with my hands and my upper body, I started having not just like only 5% use of my hands, but I started to get these like sort of weird tinglings in my limbs and my neck and stuff like that. And my doctor described it eventually as some people get a rash when they are stressed out, and this is basically what I had. But I went through probably several weeks of, I thought like a limb was going to fall off now. Like if you can lose the use of your thumb tendons,
Right.
what else could happen, And by that point, I'd already been in a wheelchair and been able to rehab back out of it. And so somewhere in the midst of all of that, I actually, my doctor's office had, I'm sure they flubbed a message from the doctor, which was basically what I was told was, call again when you have a real problem was what I took from it. And I think what they meant was, yeah, right.
Wow.
I think what was meant was when you have a physical problem, like that comes, that's like a broken leg or something like that. Like that's when we want to hear from you. But I felt so invalidated.
Right.
And I started having anxiety attacks, and it took me probably 2 or 3. And I remember standing in our front hall, and I was like, I can't breathe. What is happening?
Right.
And Ben goes, what does this feel like? And I said, oh my God, it feels like an anxiety attack. And as soon as I said that, it stopped.
Right.
It's so powerful.
Right. To be able to label it is huge.
Yeah.
Is huge. And
But you can see like the medical community too
right.
Yes.
has ignored the actual.
Yeah. Call us when you have a real problem.
Your emotional well-being. Just talk about your physical well-being.
Yeah. Not that, like, they're not connected at all. They're
Right.
not related at all. It's crazy.
It is crazy.
And it is so related. It's so interconnected.
Yeah. Do either of you have any final thoughts on social emotional learning, on Fred Rogers? Oh, just before you do, Erickson is called that because he chose his own name. He
Oh.
chose the last name Erickson. He decided he
did?
didn't want to be the son of somebody he didn't know or whatever. So he chose the name Erickson. I think that is so cool.
That is really neat. That is really neat.
Now we have to go read up on Eric
know,
Erickson too,
oh my gosh.
after we finish here. Yes.
I remember doing reading on Erickson in grad school, but it's been a really long time.
It's been a long
ladies.
time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't know that about it. I'm sure I knew it at some point, but to read it, actually, I mean, there's a whole chapter that is almost entirely about Erickson. Well, that's not really true. It's about his stages, but there's a good chunk of it that's about his life, because I just was completely fascinated with this. And I thought a reader who wanted to know how do you educate a happy child might get something out of that. So
That's cool.
So, listeners, go check it out. Yeah. Do either of you have any thoughts on social emotional learning before we move on?
Just one last thing that I wanted to say. There was a little bit of backlash that was covered in the documentary about, this whole "you are special" thing, and how it has raised an entitled generation. And what I loved is their explanation and clarification. Fred Rogers wasn't saying you're just special for every person is valuable. Every person is valued and should be valued. And that's how we should treat each other. Like every single other person in the world has value.
Yeah. Like that's what really matters.
That's what really matters.
That's great.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Our preschool director, Pat White, who just retired last year, was almost my only boss as an adult. And thankfully she was a really great boss. And when I was pregnant with Max, I started bleeding. I needed to go on bed rest. And I was 29, and I thought, she's going to fire me. She doesn't need a person on her hands that can't even come to class to teach. And I was like, I totally thought that it would be, I was prepared for that. I thought it would be fine. I basically thought it was going to be a sort of them's are the breaks, babe. And Pat sat down with me and she was like, all right, so we're finding a long-term sub. You can come back whenever you feel comfortable coming back. This is and I was like, but don't you not want me around? And she's like, Karen, there is nothing more important than what you are doing now. Go have your child. Don't worry. Grow your child. Don't worry about us. We're going to be fine. We are here for you. And we really want you back when you can come back. And I just remember feeling so protected and safe and everything. And I was able to go home and relax. It's the most basic thing. And I think we need to remember that, Thank you guys both for both aspects of that topic. Cause that was a lot of really, really cool kind of discussion. I love roundtables. They're so cool. All right. So what I wanted to talk about was, so this started because Janine is the sponsor she's sponsoring We Turned Out Okay with incredible products. These things called Kolp and cue cards. And we're going to talk more about those in a couple of minutes, or one specific card in a couple of minutes. But just before you arrived, Tricia, we were talking, we made a bunch of recordings, because what's happening is over the weeks, each week, a listener is going to be able to hear a word from Janine directly, the sponsor directly, which I think is that's the only way that I listen to sponsorships, to be honest. I will fast forward through them unless I'm hearing from the actual sponsor. And I think these cards are incredible. I really wanted to bring them to people. But as we're recording, it occurred to me that I've got a series right now while this episode, when this episode comes out, we'll be in the midst of a series called How to Stop School from Screwing Up Your Child. Yeah. And my thought was, maybe Janine, as a sponsor, doesn't want her products, to be positioned in an episode that's bashing schools. And so we just had this conversation about it. And so what I kind of wanted to bring up in the roundtable was about schools screwing up kids. And where I come from this is I've been reading a lot of John Taylor Gatto recently. I will link to him in the show notes. He's a guy who was a school teacher in New York City. And in 91, he won the New York City Teacher of the Year Award. And then in 92, he won both that and the New York State Teacher of the Year Award. And the speech that he gives at one of those award ceremonies is just a condemnation of schools. It's basically, he called it like something like the seven lessons that schools teach, or the 7 lessons that I teach as a teacher. And they are horrible. I mean, there are things like, I teach indifference. I teach kids that they're not lovable. Like he didn't say it in these ways, but basically that's what he's saying is hold on. This is the value of being able to record in your own office. So teaching indifference is the one that I just recently recorded. And then here we go. The next one is he says, I teach kids to become dependent intellectually and emotionally, was another one. He says, I teach kids to be confused, to feel that they're intrinsically wrong within themselves, and they don't understand that. They don't understand why. And you can agree or disagree with these. You know what I mean? But to me, this just speaks to me. And then the last one that the series. So you guys are actually getting a sneak preview of this series if you're listening, because this is what I'm going to be talking about, right? And the last one is that kids feel continually. I teach kids to feel assessed, judged, and evaluated continually from the outside, not intrinsically. And I was reading these ideas and just thinking, like, I've got people who listen to the show whose kids are starting kindergarten, they're in 1st or 2nd grade. They're coming, like we're recording in, it's the last weekend of September. So everybody's just trying to get back into the school year. And I'm so thankful to hear about all this social and emotional learning. And maybe that will go some way towards not having the problems, not seeing these problems that John Taylor Gatto talks about. But the idea that school is screwing up kids and how do we help with that, I guess, is kind of where I'm coming at it from. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Well, it's difficult from my perspective as a preschool teacher.
In a school system.
In a school system, in a public school.
I mean, that's why I wanted
an
to
integrated
bring it up,
program.
I want to hear your feelings on this.
So all of that is so foreign to me. I feel as if everything that you just said that he mentioned.
Kids are assessed and evaluated and all that. Yeah.
That I am doing the exact opposite.
Oh, that's awesome. In a school system.
Yes,
you are doing
and
the
have
exact
been
opposite.
for almost 30 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that this, also ties into that social emotional learning. Everyone is validated. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. Everybody has something to offer. Everybody's special, as the Mr. Rogers quote.
Right.
That's my perspective on teaching and learning. And then I feel like I instill in my students, and I have for my whole career, that you're special. You have things to offer. You can learn how to control your feelings. You can, make friends. You learn how to do that.
Is that
to work alongside other people, but not anything like you're being judged or you're being. So
that's cool.
But again, it's a preschool perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're not testing kids. We're not giving grades. We're not those kinds of things. They may feel more judged in upper grades.
Do you feel like you have to bring in like letters and numbers and reading and writing skills? Like, is that a part of what you do in preschool?
We expose them to that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's integrated into all of our activities.
It's through game.
It's through games and play and fun activities.
Yeah.
Certainly no sitting down and doing a worksheet or something like that. I can't speak to what happens in kindergarten because I have seen the trend, the kindergarten level to be, bumped up academically to be more like first grade. And I don't know if children are developmentally ready for that.
No,
at 5 years old.
I don't think they are.
So
I don't think they are.
That So I have not taught at kindergarten, but I have observed in kindergarten classrooms, and it is surprising to me to see. how much a focus on academics there are.
You look horrified. I mean, just by this idea, like Tricia keeps looking over at like the thing I was just reading from, and like, oh my god,
I was horrified. No, seriously, because I can't hide my emotions.
Yeah,
my
yeah.
face shows everything.
Yeah,
and Karen
yeah.
knows me well, so
Yeah.
I'm like, what is she reading? Who is this? What kind of a teacher would say these things?
He soon after he read that speech, he resigned from teaching, and he put an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that said, "I'm leaving teaching because I'm damaging my students." And his students were middle school age, so he really felt like he was not teaching the lessons that.
My question would be too: is it because of the restrictions put on him through like administration in the district
That's exactly
that he
what
had
it is.
to? You hear people say we have to teach to the tests, and we're not.
Yeah.
Right.
And this is in the early
and the
90s.
social emotional
so.
piece has been missing.
Yes.
So it is. And in our district, they've hired a person to coordinate the social emotional learning throughout the system. It's not just at
That's
my
hopeful.
level.
That's really hopeful.
It is. It's great. And so, there's, our district is trying to implement this through, preschool through graduation.
And I think there's so many programs out there. You were reading all the competencies that you were talking about. Those are CASEL, so the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, and that they're out of Chicago. And so they have lots of research on the importance of social and emotional learning. They've done a ton. They've done a lot of information on different programs that schools can use. They have preschool, and they go all the way through 12th grade.
Wow.
So
okay, I got to stop you though. I got to the word collaboration. What's the rest of that?
You can do it.
Its the acronym is CASEL.
Yeah.
CASEL.
CASEL. Okay, cool. I'm going to link to that in the show notes. So I just want to make sure I had it right.
But it's really, there are so many programs out there, and it's not, there's, my kids have done, let's see, what have my own children are doing not Open Circle. I used to teach Open Circle. So
I've heard of that.
So that's one that's, I think, more like K-5, K-6, but there's other ones like Responsive Classroom, Restorative Justice for older kids. Also, oh my gosh, the guy who does Dr. Ross Green has a great book.
We've talked about him before.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
Lost at School. So he talks really about helping kids be able to problem solve collaboratively with an adult. And so that's really a great way that you can use that as well. And he has research backing up his strategies and his interactions and interventions that he uses. But I think it comes from the top down. And I think your district does it. I know my own children's district does it. I love my elementary school. Where my kids go, they're a bucket filling school, which means they talk about making sure that people are doing kind things for others. And we have a ceremony every single month where everybody in the school, every teacher gets up and puts in all the good things that happen. They call out the kids by name and say,
wow.
You stand up, you were a bucket filler this month. And it's fantastic. So things are happening in a positive way.
Yes.
I've also heard, as I've gone and I've done speaking, there are also teachers that are disheartened and teachers that are feeling sad, but they want social and emotional learning. They want it and they want somebody else to help them with it. There's so many strains on teachers these days. It's a very different job than it was 30, 40 years ago. My own parents were educators, so I see this. I saw this as my mom was, moving as a kindergarten teacher, actually.
Yeah.
What she started off doing versus what she ended up doing, two very different things.
Very different.
Very different.
Wow.
Our district, in our program, we use the second step curriculum.
Yeah, that's the one that my kids use. Sorry, I couldn't think of it.
And then we have through our Literacy Journeys kit, there's what we call Sing and Share for the younger ones. But we also have a district-wide PBIS program, which is positive behavioral interventions and supports. So,
okay.
And the way we've implemented it at the preschool, there are two rules: be safe, be kind.
Perfect.
And then we have all the things that you can do to be safe, things that you do to be kind.
Yeah.
And we have a beehive, so they earn a bee to put on the hive if they've done something safe or kind, and or they get a sticker. Then when we fill the hive, the whole classroom gets a special activity or thing to do. So that's working out great, and it's implemented in the elementary school also.
We used to. Do you remember when we would have like a giant tree made out of paper on the wall, and we would put apples on it for when kids did something nice for other kids.
Yeah. So
and what was fun
we were
about
trying way back then.
Yeah,
Karen.
exactly. Yes, we're good.
But we did the kindness tree.
We did, yeah.
Yes.
And what I remember about that was, and even then I didn't know. Like it's all sort of landing on me right now. Like what we did was we would sometimes intentionally choose a kid who had been really making trouble, and we would find one tiny thing that we could say that they did that was kind. And we would see, we did it to make them feel, oh my gosh, to feel happy and rewarded. But what we saw after that was that they got kinder. If you reward those good things, you see other good things.
Right. And we had, your kindness tree makes me think we had a kindness wall of fame at my elementary school I used to work at. So we would have teachers have these little stars. And anytime a kid was like above and beyond really helping out, and not the star kids, the kids that are always doing things, we would look for the quieter kids.
You have to really look sometimes.
And you have to really look. Who are the kids that are sort of falling through the cracks but are just doing great? They're like swimming along, but nobody's recognizing them for their good.
Yeah.
And so we would put them on the kindness wall of fame, and you would walk into the building, and we had a huge thing. The art teacher helped me with it. And so she put it all up, and she gave us all stars, and it was just all these like gold stars with their names on it. It was so cool.
Oh, that's awesome. And again, coming back to Chief Inspector Gamache, the homicide director of the Sûreté du Québec, he is through and through a kind person, and he's got like, there's one of the books which focuses on the conflict between him and this guy that has been his best friend like over their whole life. So this other guy is his boss now, and yet he is still like consumed with sort of rage and jealousy of Gamache because he isn't happy with his life, and Gamache is very happy and settled within himself, and he's like, kindness is one of the most important aspects of life. These books basically teach that, which I just, and it's not in a teachy way at all. It's in the way that you read the story and you're like, oh. So I hate to keep relating everything back to murder mysteries, but God, they're just so good. I've been obsessed. Sorry.
I would like to go back to what horrified
John
me.
Taylor Gatto. Yes, definitely. I get you. It's so funny. I wanted to bring it back to that as well. Yeah.
So it's still going through my head
like
as we're talking and you saying how we left teaching. It seems to me like if you're feeling that way in the trend in your school district, or you had administrators telling you need to do this and you need to do that and whatever, and it would seem like personally I would try to change things. Like I wouldn't want to just retire or leave teaching because I felt like I wasn't doing enough or giving enough or I'm hurting the students. So I would try to be a different person.
I want to just interject. He had been a teacher for decades by that point. He had spent, I think, 20,
possibly
30, 40
was he
years
burnt out?
It's possible. But what actually happened is he sort of sparked a whole movement of homeschooling was a part of it, of people looking at
my next question.
Schools and saying, what's wrong here and how can we fix it? In fact, he inspired a guy who's also been on the show named Blake Bowles. Blake Bowles does a lot of work with young adults. Like he will take a group of kids to Argentina for 6 months or maybe 12 weeks, something like 3 months. Mm-hmm. And just, it's education, but it's in such a completely different way. Like it's how do you send an email? How do you make a travel reservation? How do you meet people in a city where you don't speak the language? Like, he sort of takes kids and does all these really cool things with them. But it all came from, and so I want to put your mind a little bit at ease, like because
did some good come out of it, Karen?
A lot of good came out of it, but also that is one, I don't know. I don't even know what small fraction of words he ever wrote that was, but that was it was it's like a sixth of this book, so or less, this speech that he gives. And I think by that point you're right, he totally could have been burned out. He had just seen kids suffer enough that he was like, all right, I just can't do this anymore. And also I wonder if maybe he thought here's a platform that I can speak from, that I
Right.
will be heard. If I'm standing in front of a bunch of teachers
And hopefully
saying,
make changes if you felt
Exactly.
changes needed to come.
yeah, I don't think he was sort of a consumed with, fire kind of, or hellfire and damnation kind of person. I think he was more of a, like, this is a way that I can make an impact, have an impact. And then he went on to work and write and work with kids in different capacities. So
I wonder though if it speaks to more of teacher burnout and what the rate of teacher burnout is, and why is that? And is that because we are so focused on STEM and focused on testing, and we're forgetting all the social and emotional learning?
Yeah.
So kids are not able to manage their emotions, and then you're trying to deal with emotions while you're trying to teach, which is very frustrating as a teacher.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine. I know it is frustrating. That's who I would go and help the teacher out when that was happening when I was a school counselor.
And
I've had people, say, well, here's your second step curriculum, whatever. And okay, we have to do that in addition to everything else we have to get done.
How do you incorporate it all? Yeah.
But it's, and to not value that as being just as important as learning to read and learning to do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And just putting so much on teachers without actually having mental health support in the schools. And I think that's, for me, this is just me, from my school counselor piece, that I think that there should be more school counselors in the building.
Yeah.
I think that
not fewer.
Yeah, there should be more.
Absolutely.
Don't take them out of the budget.
The American School Counselor Association, the ratio is supposed to be 250 kids to one school counselor.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if I never had that ratio ever as a school counselor. And I just think about what would have been.
Wait, no. So to me, that sounds like an insane amount of kids.
I've had 400. I've
Oh
had
my
600.
So like you would wish that you had 250.
Because I feel like I could manage that. I feel like I could do, I could go into school. I would go into classrooms. And do lessons. I'd be able to manage if there were crises. One year, my last year in a school, I actually had an intern who was phenomenal. He was an incredible counselor. He was on it. So it was like having two of us in the building, and it worked like it was just a great machine. I would be managing the lunch groups and he would go and deal with the crisis, and just having the two of us, we were able to manage everything. We would go to, we had to go to IEP meetings or 504s, but then, you have to be aware of how much you're asking of a teacher. And I think people are asking
Tricia's
too much
nodding,
of them.
Yes.
Well, it does. It falls upon us too.
Right. Because especially at, it's your
teacher, counselor.
Right.
Yeah.
It's
Advocate,
everything.
parent. It's just.
And, that's not possible. It's not a possible job. What was teaching 30 years ago is not what teaching is today.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we're seeing all these people nope, no thank you. I'm burnt out. I'm done because I can't do this anymore. It is physically impossible for me to get all the curriculum done and take care of their social and emotional needs.
Yeah. When I think about, I have a chronic illness, and I had wanted to go back to teaching. I'd wanted to return to the preschool very badly. Mm-hmm. And it became clear that I wasn't going to be able to do that because of this tendon disorder. But the tendon disorder is largely caused by stress. I actually have, talk about things going on below your head.
Right.
My body creates
real
scar
physical
tissue,
symptoms.
creates real physical symptoms. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
That's real. That's a real thing. And I think a lot of parents take that upon themselves as well. And so if you have a person who's both a parent and a teacher,
right
now, I actually tried. There was a year when Max was 2 years old. No, when he was 1 year old, I went to school 2 days a week, and I couldn't cope. It was two days a week was too much. And I just think about the lack of support that there are for teachers. And, one of the reasons I wanted to bring this up in this roundtable, this idea of school screwing up kids, is because I wanted to make sure that everybody knows it's not an indictment of a teacher or even an administrator, or a parent or any of these sort of more individual, smaller. I think this is a systemic issue. I from what you guys are saying, I do feel really hopeful about the idea that maybe something's being done about this now. I really, really hope so. And So when I talk about school, this was a series that actually almost didn't get on the show because I was like, I'm going to hurt so many feelings. But I do feel like these are hard truths that I want a parent to be able to evaluate their child on the fly and be able to say, well, my child does look anxious right now, or like maybe my child is being taught not to care. And one of the ways that we talk about in that episode is he talks about bells as like every time you get into something, you get interrupted again and again and again in a school setting. You can't concentrate on anything because you're going to have to stop it before you're ready pretty well. And he says, like, so the basic overarching feeling is, why bother? Like, why do this? And so what I want parents of young children who are largely listening to know is, like, to give your kids that open-ended playtime and to make it be when they want to finish up is when they finish up.
Right.
So it's not, you get the opportunity to dig into something and care about it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Do you guys agree?
Yeah, and to be able to end it when you want, that's locus of control, that you are learning how self-control, and you are learning what you are in control of. If you have open-ended play, you can just be like, I'm done with Legos right now.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it is in the preschool setting. But
yeah.
I mean, but we do have some time restrictions. I'm going to give you, and I
Exactly.
give children warnings.
Yes.
We're going to have 5 more minutes.
Yes.
So you have 5 more minutes to finish up what you're doing, and then we need to move on to something else, or it's snack time, or it's time to go home, or whatever. So there are times when
you have to.
We do follow a schedule.
Yeah.
But I'm flexible within it. But
Yeah.
they have lots of choices within that schedule.
And then you can also come up with, I remember coming up with strategies for kids who just wanted that Lego to stay, they wanted to be able to come back to the Lego. And so sometimes we would set it aside, and they could, or something like that.
Sometimes I'll set it aside. We can leave it until tomorrow. You can play with it tomorrow.
Yep.
Or let's take a picture of it. So you can bring it home. That kind of thing. Because it is hard
a really
to
good thing.
let go of something when you get really involved in it.
Yeah. And that's, so I also want listeners to know that as well, that like, it's not a sort of sunshine and rainbows and kittens, like we can all do whatever we want for however long, whenever. Like, we got to get to the doctor. We got to get food on the table. We got to get to bed. There are things that really
families have schedules too.
Yeah.
And it's hard.
Yeah.
But I think, just in general, whatever you're doing within your day and your schedule and your life is those principles of recognizing feelings of your children, validating them, helping them to cope, learn how their body is feeling, what they can do to help their body feel better when they're having a strong feeling, and talking about problem solving.
Yeah.
What can you do? What can we do to help you? And
how
can you help yourself? So wherever you're going, and sure, there's anxiety about the doctor, and
absolutely,
I get scared too when I go to the doctor. My heart starts racing. My blood pressure goes up.
The dentist is awful.
Yeah.
So letting children know, everyone
I feel that
gets
way
a
too
little
sometimes.
anxious too.
Yep.
And even like your dog gets nervous when they go to the vet. So it's like we all have these feelings in common.
I love that.
And I think, just reading to your child every day, just making some time for their free play, but also just sitting down and reading, even if it's just for a few minutes. And you can get some of Todd Parr's books and read about
and enjoy.
read about feelings and coping strategies.
I love this because I feel like we're ending on a real, like, you're smiling again, Tricia. We're all, I like the idea of ending this kind of roundtable segment on a real positive note, which is there are things that we can do, even if they are being taught not to care in school. Like, there are things we can do at home that will make a huge difference over their
validated
whole
my feelings, Karen.
lives.
He's like, you could see that I see that you're horrified, Tricia. Thank you for noticing and validating my feelings.
Practicing what you preach.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, what I'd love to do is kind of have a quick moment with our sponsor, who's right here.
Here I am.
And then we're going to move on to questions. We've got some questions. So we're doing okay. We're, relatively speaking, on time. So Janine Halloran is our sponsor. I'm so grateful to you, Janine, for sponsoring the show. I think I said this in here, I can't remember, but the reason that you're a sponsor of We Turned Out Okay is because you have created a product that I personally feel 100% like jumping up and down excited about. And they are called coping. Oh my gosh. I'm going to let you say it because I'm,
Yeah,
Go ahead.
it's kind of a tongue twister. They're the coping cue cards. So they're card decks with different strategies kids can use to help manage their emotions.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And, they each card, there are 5 different decks or
Yep.
by this time there might even be 6 decks, right?
Almost. There will be 6 decks by the beginning of October. So whenever this comes out, I'll probably be shipping the processing deck at that point as well.
Cool. And each deck shares a different way for us to help our kids. Well, each deck shares a different way for kids to handle stresses and to handle that they'd like to learn to cope with the things. So there's a relaxation deck, there's distraction, there's movement. What is the, and every time, each sponsorship like segment, what we're doing is we're talking about one deck, one card. So which deck is this one from?
So this is from the Relaxation Deck, and this is all about breathing because breathing is one of those things that we need to teach kids how to do, but it can be a little bit hard. They need a little bit of structure. So this card is pretend your belly is a balloon, breathe in and make the balloon bigger, and breathe out and make the balloon smaller. And I love this strategy because it helps kids breathe from their belly and not from their chest. So breathing from the belly is really going to be more relaxing for them than breathing from the chest. So that's why I chose this card.
Oh, I love it. And like
great.
we've been having such heated discussions, and I don't mean heated in a negative way, but it's just been really, sometimes it will get really intense and you can forget to breathe. And then you're like, oh yeah.
And you just take a little
Even
breath.
Adults need to remember that. So, so I love that. Well, thank you very much. So you can go to copingskillsforkids.com, which is all one word, copingskillsforkids.com/okay. OKAY. And when you go there, you can purchase card decks, and if you use code OKAY, you can get 15% off of your purchase.
Yep.
So that's exciting. I really think that if you're listening, you should do this like right now. I love these cards. They're amazing, and they're super, super helpful. So Janine, thank you very much for bringing them to us, for creating them in the first place.
Thank you so much for talking about them. I really appreciate it.
Cool. Well, they're well worth it. All right. So now we're going to move on to, I'm so excited about this. We've had some questions from our We Turned Out Okay community. And now I gave people like 0 time. Like basically I found out yesterday that that we were going to go forward with this in this way. And so I have 3 questions, and my hope is that we will be able to get, we'll be able to do all of them.
Okay.
I would think so, Okay, so the first one is from a private coaching client of mine. Her name is Nora. Hello, Nora. And she says, any tips for helping us both, which is her and her, I believe now 4-year-old son, when this goes up. Any tips for helping us both stay positive and motivated as we are pushing through this cycle of daily testing and multiple rough days a week at school, which means multiple evenings that pick up on a negative note with getting a bad report from the teacher? Or any other suggestions for helping, encouraging listening to the teachers or following the rules at school? So I think Nora is concerned that her son, like she's remote, she's not at school. And she's trying to figure out, like, how do I help my child have better behavior at school, even if I'm not there? And I'm like,
How old is this
he
child?
he is, I believe, just 4, so he's just turning 4.
So in preschool.
He's in preschool, yeah. His daycare is preschool. And I don't know what you guys think on that, but.
So I'd first want to make sure that there's some communication between the teacher and the parent, just because I want to make sure that they're sort of sharing strategies with each other that do work. It's really easy to go down that negative hole and say, this didn't work, this didn't work, this didn't work. But what is working? Because is it 100% of the day? Like, just like you were talking about, like finding that one little tiny thing that's working. Like it just that one little tiny thing makes a huge difference.
Yeah.
To be able to find that and build on that would be really good, I think.
Yeah, that's a good. So Nora, think on that. Like, trying to make sure that the communication that you have with your child's teachers is really optimal.
Yep,
basically.
And then also,
The setting. I would
go ahead.
look at the setting. What what is the daycare preschool like? Is it a good fit? You know, what's their philosophy? What's their schedule like? How many students? What's the student teacher ratio?
Yeah.
All of those things you need to take into consideration. And
That's true.
The training of the staff.
Yeah.
You know, what is going on?
Yeah.
You know,
Is it a good fit?
is it a good fit?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a real variable, not necessarily with this particular client, but like in my Ninja parenting community, which is where I work really closely with a bunch of different parents. I mean, there have been people in there who have had just tales of the most horrific daycare situations that you're like, how is somebody, what are their qualifications is such a good question, because sometimes, you know, you think they're well qualified and they're not. In fact, there's one woman that we've spent 6 months moving from bad childcare, which I don't even like to say that word, but it was, to they relocated to an entirely different city, and purposefully found a good daycare center. Like they moved where they moved for that.
I think you and I discussed this. It might have been a question from that same person when we recorded last time. Yeah,
it's very true. Yeah, so it's interesting that this question is similar to that. You know what I mean? So start with the basics, right? It sounds like is what you're saying.
Yes. So I would open the communication between the staff and the parent, just to get a real handle on what the problem is. How often is it occurring? Is there just one behavior a day that they're reporting and they're just reporting on the negative?
Right.
Yeah.
Is it a certain time of day? Is it a certain
Yeah. So let's assume, for example, that the staffing is great. You know what I mean? And that like it's a good environment. But if we're still seeing misbehavior, if we're still seeing I don't know, things that we don't want like our kids to be doing.
And I would also, you know, as a parent, I would want to get some positive feedback every day.
Mm-hmm.
What can you tell me that my child did that went
well?
Today?
Yeah.
That went well today. And not focus on the negative or give a negative report in front of the child.
Right.
Oh, that's a really good point.
I don't know if that's happening. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And it's making me think of recently there's a segment of my show called The Parenting News, and I've had a really rough September, so I've been looking for positivity TED Talks. And I love them. They're amazing. I'm laughing because I feel a little bit sheepish. Like, you know, it's like, why don't I just already know these things? But sometimes I need that validation as well. And so there's one that I recently featured by a woman named, I think it was Allison Ledgerwood, who's got a TED Talk about a simple trick for improving positivity or improving positive thinking, something like that. And I don't want to, it's not a spoiler that I want to do here, but factoring in a lot of what factors into this is asking yourself, like, what went well today?
Yes.
And I think that's so important in front of the child, especially to talk about, pick anything. Tell them, Nora, to pick anything and say, this is a thing that went well today. And then maybe privately talk about the things but it also sounds like, I think what Nora was maybe hoping for was a little bit of like, this is how I can directly intervene. Is there a way for a parent to directly intervene? Like,
you mean within the school setting?
Yes, exactly. Like I want to try and I mean, I guess my feeling is like part of the work of childhood is to get along in a school setting without your folks necessarily right there to help, and that might be hard to hear, but that's maybe how I feel about it. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
Well, I think it comes down to, okay, so what can you do at home to support at school?
Yeah.
And so the thing that I think makes a lot of sense is going back to what we were talking about with social and emotional learning, taking time to relax and hang out unplugged. Like when you get off the bus or when he gets in, like not necessarily talking about how the day went, but just having a snack and chilling out.
Yeah.
I actually saw a picture of a kid in one of the Facebook groups I'm in. He'd had a really rough kind of couple of days, and his mom just ran him a bubble bath and gave him some orange juice in a little plastic cup, and he put his little eye mask on, and he was just chilling out in the tub. And maybe that's what he needs.
Yeah.
Maybe he just needs to chill out and have a bubble bath.
Yeah.
Or, maybe he needs to just relax and play something, play with Play-Doh, get that squeezing in, do something that is like not related to what went wrong, but do just something that is just hanging out and just chilling out for a little bit. And then later you can talk about it. I'm sure it's probably pretty heated at the end of the day,
Yeah.
Right. If parents have worked all day and
they're tired
picking
too.
up their children, they're tired, they're, trying to get things done, dinner, whatever. I'm not sure how long the child is at school, but that makes it hard too.
Yes.
And then it's hard. I know when I get home, I need a time.
But yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, how many times
just
have we come in the door and said, like, don't talk to me right now? You're going to get a
15
You
minutes.
might get a yes in half an hour,
I
but
might
you're not
just-
going to get one right now.
I might just, need to sit on my couch and look at reruns of Laura Markham on TV or something, or go on Facebook.
Go on a walk.
I just need some downtime.
Yeah. Something where you
before
can
I jump into what I need to do at home.
Yeah.
And I think children are the same.
Yes.
They need to unwind. They've had a long day too. And,
Yeah. That's a really good point. So
but
Nora,
I think though, in thinking, like checking out the setting, make sure that there's a positive focus.
I love that idea. Yeah. I love the idea of ending the day on a positive note as well, even if it's just something small, just something that they can feel good about themselves with, something that they...
You don't know, like, we don't know the details of the setting, but they could be overwhelmed with too many children, or there could be, not enough staff. And I know some centers
changes in
are like
routine
that.
or something like that.
Yeah.
Dropping your nap. Like if a kid is dropping a nap, that can throw their whole lives out of whack.
Absolutely.
I just want to write down, I think it's Allison Ledgerwood TED Talk. So I want to make sure I get that in here. So Nora, I really, really hope that helps. I mean, it's even helping me think differently about it. I love, you guys are so positive, and I think that's really cool. Janine and Tricia. Okay, so next up, we are hearing from Mama Llama, who is one of our community members in the Ninja Parenting community. She is anonymous in our forums, and she says, my question. Now, I've actually responded to this in the forums, but I just thought it would be interesting to get a different, perspective on it. My question is how to handle taking multiple requests to do something: put away toys, get dressed, clear his plate after dinner, wash his hands after going potty, put on his shoes. Oh, the discussions about shoes. She says some days he will do all these things, and he is 3. Some days he will do all these things without batting an eye, and other days it's all a struggle of no, I won't, or I don't want to. I love this. She almost answers her own question. So I'll read it. She says, I really need to get better with the visual cards of the list of what to do next in our routines. It's worked somewhat before. So I don't know if that was going to jump right up.
Visual schedule popped right into my head.
So did I. I was like, you just have to have these things. I'm like, I'm in Michael's. I'm like laminating stuff for her.
Yep. There's actually, so further down, I'm in a picture, not in our actual forums, but further down in the forums, she says something like, I just made a little picture of like shoes by the door, or it was something about not running out of the, I don't remember now, but she put an index card like with a little drawing on it that she sort of drew and put it up there, and it's been really helpful. So,
but this behavior is very typical of a 3-year-old.
Yes.
It's the nature of a 3-year-old.
It's the nature of a 3-year-old.
Yes. So very typical.
Yeah. Sometimes they do it and sometimes they don't. And they're just sort of feeling and figuring it out.
Yeah,
cool.
Trying to, exert some independence.
Right. Where are the limits?
Yeah. Where are the limits? We talk a lot about that room that we all have in our heads. And when we are inconsistent with limits, kids are going to continue pushing because they need to know that they're safe and that the walls don't move. But if we're inconsistent, we're moving their walls. So if one day we severely come down on them hard for running down the hall is my usual, if we're like, don't you run down that hall, go to your room right now, no dinner for you, which is outrageously extreme for running down the hall. And I hope nobody listening is doing that. But then if you do that and then the next day you're like, run down the hall, you've moved their walls because they're
Right.
looking for you to always be consistent. And so that's something important to keep in
And
mind.
when adults are unpredictable, it's scary.
And when adults are unpredictable,
It's very
it's
scary for them. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. I'm going to write that down. So I've written down a couple of things that I think might be good like names for this episode. And when adults are unpredictable, it's scary. It might be what we do. The other one I have is Janine, you said before, can we get back to what kids really need? I like that a lot too. All right. When adults are unpredictable, it's scary. Do either of you guys have anything else to say about Mama Llama's issue before we move on to question 3?
No, just visual schedules are
Visual,
incredible.
Yeah,
They
first
really
then
are.
do this for, I mean, maybe not putting so many steps on the schedule.
Right.
Like,
Oh,
like you
yeah.
I know you had listed put away the toys or
Yeah. Wash your hands after going
Da-da.
potty, get the dishes
all
into
those
the dish.
kinds of things.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, having a couple of steps maybe, and then, first do these 2 things and then you can play with your Legos, or do these things and then we'll look at a book,
Yeah.
or something like that. So
Yeah.
there's,
Those kinds of
Yeah, and you can have, for
broken down for
try
them.
and simplify
washing
it.
the hands after, you could have like the visual schedule in the bathroom. So for just that, like, what do you do to go to the bathroom? Like, these are the things you do.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be like everywhere.
Do you remember when
And you don't
we
have to keep saying it.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
you
You
can
can
just-
just see it.
Yeah, just look
Um,
at this. You can even just point to the schedule.
I don't know if you guys you probably have some cool digital way to do this now, but I can remember, and I loved them. I was like the queen of contact paper, and I believe you were the queen of Velcro. And so what we would do is we would, and you were also the queen of Board Maker, that
Yes.
software.
Oh my God.
Yes.
I know. And so we'd have like these little pictures, and on one side would be the picture of, wash your hands, and on the other side would be like you could turn it over and there would be like a smiley face or something like that. And and there was Velcro to stick it to an oak tag, schedule. And like just the fun the kids would have ripping those off and turning them over.
Yeah.
Like it just
When it
feels
was
so
done, yeah.
good when it
Yeah.
was done. Yes, exactly. So visual schedule is very, very important, you guys. Woohoo! It always makes me feel really good when
And
like
you don't need a formal program like Boardmaker or other things.
no,
You
You can take
need
real photos.
a pencil drawing. You need,
Yeah.
and then, and the understanding of what that means. You
Right.
need almost nothing.
Yeah.
A picture from a magazine or a catalog,
Yep.
Yeah. Or
Yeah, you can
search
Pixabay.
on Google.
Yeah,
Google
Pixabay has
search
free.
on Google.
Yeah, free
Yep.
pictures you can download.
Oh, Pixabay. I'm going to write that down. I love Pixabay. As a link, a reference for you listening so that you can go to pixabay.com and you can find lots and lots and lots of cool
about
pictures.
everything.
Yeah,
just
and
about everything.
illustrations.
And
yeah.
illustrations. Yeah. Little clip art. Okay. So the third one is, this is from a listener named Jessica. So when you sign up when you go to weturnedoutokay.com/weekly, every Wednesday I send out a parenting newsletter. And I always try to have like a mindset thing or a useful tool or something like that in those. But when people sign up for those, what I say is, I send them back an email immediately that basically says like, tell me what your challenge is. And then I'll see if I can help. And Jessica's challenge is one that I have wanted to get back to. And I really am glad to do that because like, it was one that I wanted other people's thinking on. So I'm glad that I get to have you guys. Okay. So she says, I love the podcast. Thank you, Jessica. She says, thank you so much for what you're doing for all of us parents. That is so nice to hear. What a compliment. That makes me feel really good. She writes, I'm a full-time working parent with 4 very active boys, 10, 6, and identical twin 3-year-olds. Our house is chaotic, but happy most of the time. My biggest parenting challenge, honestly, there are many, but the top of the list is learning how to get all of my kids to coexist with each other. Added to that is how to divide my attention fairly. A large portion of strife amongst my kids is for my attention. I have a loving husband, but the kids always flock to me. I want them to bond together, not just compete for my attention. I'm constantly searching for balance, but it's so hard. I just want to raise happy kids. And the way that I was framing this was when you are their touchstone, like is how I've been thinking of it, when your kid only wants you. So I don't know, before we, I guess, go right to that issue, like, do you have any thoughts on Jessica's challenges, either of you?
It's a tough one. She said 4 boys.
4 boys, 10,
4.
6, and 3-year-old twins.
Yeah, and it's very difficult because, she said she wanted to divide our time up fairly.
Yeah.
But fair does not necessarily mean the same exact time for each one.
Right.
It's not
So-
equal.
Fair doesn't mean equal.
But fair does not mean equal. So it is challenging. But just, looking at, and they are at different developmental levels, obviously, because of the ages, looking at how much time or when certain children need more of you than others,
Yeah.
and that trying to find that balance. I know it's difficult, but it's not, there's no like solution of, all right, you have this 10 minutes, you can
Yeah.
so that you're dividing your time, this is your mom time, whatever. But I know it's a crazy balance, but realizing that they all have different needs and may have on different days, one might need you more than the other.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to find those pockets of time that you can sort of that one-on-one is powerful
Divvy
for
up.
kids.
It is, yes.
So to be able to find that one-on-one time, even if it's only a few minutes, like maybe you go in and like you see all of them at bedtime, but like only for a few minutes each of them.
Yeah.
And because that's when honestly a lot of kids talk
Yeah.
is at
that's so
bedtime,
true.
like when you're putting them down.
Can you divide and conquer, Jessica, as well? Like, so for example, if we're thinking of bedtime, can daddy be
Yes.
with two,
Hopefully,
Yeah,
yes.
And
do
then you
two,
can
and
switch,
then you switch the
exactly,
days.
and
You switch on
the
the days.
So one of my favorite things that my brother and his family have always done, they're now teenagers, so probably they don't do this quite so much anymore, or maybe they do it differently, is they, rather than read every night, they would tell stories, like family stories. And to go over and stay with them or sit with them while my brother and his wife went out or whatever was so much fun, because you'd put those kids to bed and individually, right? They would each either want me to tell a story about their daddy when he was younger, or they would want to tell me a story about either their mom or dad or their family life or something like that. And it just became such a delightful, like such a family bonding kind of thing. So maybe you don't do that necessarily, but maybe you get to spend individual time with two of them while dad spends individual time with the other two, and then you switch, as Janine just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is important too. That
Yeah. And
they feel like an individual.
Yeah.
I'm not just within a group all the time.
Right.
I'm special within my family.
Yeah. And then I love this idea too from To Kill a Mockingbird, where Scout, they have a little friend named Dill who runs away from home, and the reason he runs away is because his family was like, here, I got you this toy, go play with it. I got you this book, go read it. And Scout is thinking like, my family couldn't get along a day without me. Like she's feeling so needed and like a vibrant part of her family. And here's her friend Dill, who's like, they don't care if I'm around. They don't need me. And I think, I think that it's a challenge with 4, but it can also be a real joy to try and create the kind of family life where they are all feeling like they're an integral part,
Right. It sounded like there were 2 parts to that question.
Yes.
The children getting along with each other.
Oh, there was that as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Trying
is
to
a
get them to
challenge.
coexist. And, that's, again, a very typical thing where
Yeah.
you have siblings with conflicts, and
Yeah.
sometimes they're loving each other, sometimes they're hating each other, and with the different ages too. That
Yeah.
might be tough.
Because they have different needs at different ages.
Right.
So, but all right, we need to give Jessica something positive, because we're highlighting a lot of challenges, and I think this is really important. But I also want to leave her with some ideas for how to integrate what we're talking about.
I'm wondering if they could play a cooperative game, that the boys.
Oh,
all together.
awesome!
So doing something cooperative, whether that's like maybe building an obstacle course, because that sounds like that might be right up their alley.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that's something that all like making sure that the bigger kids can help, and like making sure that the little kids can do it. And then they all run through the obstacle course, and they can time each other, or they can do different things, or maybe they play different games as a group together that are cool for everybody. So I don't know if I've talked about Peaceable Kingdom yet on here or not, but I love Peaceable
That sounds
Kingdom
interesting.
games. So they're all cooperative games. Every single game they make is a cooperative game. To win the game, you have to work together. So for kids that are really struggling with competition, I try and introduce cooperative games like Peaceable Kingdom games. So they have things like they have a range. So they have things like Hoot Owl Hoot, which is for like little ones.
Mm-hmm.
and you're trying to get the baby owls into the nest before the sun rises, but you all work together. So you all have all your cards out, and you have to look and see what color card you should use to get the baby owls in sooner. And then there's ones like Mole Rats in Space, which are a little bit more challenging. And that's more about, you want to make sure that you get all the ingredients into the backpacks for the mole rats before the snakes bite them. Oh my gosh, these games are adorable. One game, I have a kid who absolutely loves, what is it called? Gnomes at Night. And so you have to work there. There's two magnetized players, and you have to actually move the magnets to get alone and work together to get all the different ingredients. So lots of different ways that you can, and because sometimes games can be competitive, but there's also games that are cooperative.
I love that. So what are the age ranges for their games?
So they have preschool up until 10, 11, 12. So my family and I play Mole Rats in Space. We've finally beaten it enough times that we can open the special pack of cards. We're really proud of that. But I still play, my son still loves Hoot Owl Hoot, and it's like a preschool game, but it's so cute.
I think of Exploding Kittens as a really fun game. I can't remember. I haven't played it in so long. It's not a cooperative game in the standard sense, but
no.
But you were talking before about people taking others' perspectives and trying to understand. So could 3-year-olds play Exploding Kittens, or is that a little young?
I think it might be a little young because the cards are a little bit wackadoo. They're a little bit. Some of them are really kind of scary in a way, or gross. There's body parts that are your arms are on your legs and your legs are on your arms. And so I think for a 3-year-old that might blow their little minds, and I wouldn't want to do that to them. But for the 10-year-olds, they would totally get behind Exploding Kittens. My kids are 9 and 11, and they love Exploding Kittens.
Cool.
That's great. I like the idea of the obstacle course too.
Yeah,
something physical outside that. All of them
you could do it inside on a rainy day, but you can do it at any level.
You can do a Lego building challenge where they could build things together.
You could have older kids cheering for and or helping younger kids. There's a lot of opportunity for being needed in there, and cooperative play. That's really, really cool. Yeah. What do you guys think about? Our time is short, so we're gonna go out on this one. But Jessica also talks about. The strife amongst her kids is often for her attention. So my take on that was that she's feeling like they only want me. And Jessica, honestly, I'm not sure. Yeah, actually, she writes, I have a loving husband, but the kids always flock to me. And so do you have any thoughts on how she could handle it, but also how she could help the kids, be comfortable with her husband or whatever?
Right. I think those cooperative games, too, will help the younger ones to look to the older ones for, their attention and helping and that kind of thing. And they'll feel empowered, like they have much to offer and giving the little ones attention.
But getting dad involved,
not knowing what the husband is like, it's hard to say.
Yeah. Or what time, what are his hours, in terms of work hours or whatever.
I wonder if there could be family adventures where they plan, all 6 of them plan to do something together. So it gives the kids an opportunity to see both of them.
Oh, I love
that.
And,
they're all talking about what do we want our family adventure to be? And I'm not talking like Disney World. I'm talking let's go for a hike in Blue Hills.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't have to be financially, crippling or whatever.
Right. Let's go roller skating. Let's go, inner tubing in the winter. What are the things?
Go to Purgatory Chasm.
Right. Whatever.
Something like that that just doesn't have to cost money.
Right.
It's just together time. Unplugged time, which we've talked about
Unplugged
before.
time. But then they get a chance to actually do a little bit more interacting with their dad, which makes it more likely that they will go with him at other times.
Yeah. When that used to happen in our house, Dad started playing, they would all put on scarves and they would run up and down the hall being superheroes. And those were the nights where Daddy would be asked to read and stuff like that. And I think we felt like they definitely wanted each of us at different times. We both had turns being the one that they wanted and the one that they didn't want. I remember Jay especially being very, he had a really hard time when I would go off and be an aerobics instructor at night. And he would I could just remember him standing on the stairs and he'd just be like, bye. My little hand, my hand is doing that imitation of the sort of 3-year-old, goodbye kind of. And he at first he would just cry, and he would go to dad, and he would like bury his head in dad's shoulder and feel very like, so Ben was able to be like, I know, buddy, I'm here for you, you know, and that kind of thing. And then he got to the point where he would just be like, he would be able to say, like, you could see him like girding himself, almost like, okay, I can do this. I'm going to be, and he would say, I'm going to miss you. And I would say, I'm going to miss you too, but I'll be back really soon. You know what I mean? So, maybe another thing that you could do, especially Jessica, like we all need time away, right? So maybe another idea is to deliberately plan some time where dad's on and you're not. And so your kids do get the opportunity to say goodbye to you, to see you come back. And for you to be able to say, I'm going to miss you. And then I'll be back, and it'll be so great to be together again.
Even if it's just, I'm going to go for a walk and Dad's here.
Yeah.
You know, that
I'm
kind of
thing. I'm going to go to
thing.
Target by myself.
Yeah.
The luxury of going to
grocery
Target
shopping by myself.
or CVS.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think we all struggle with wanting to be everything to all of our children. And it's, you know, trying to juggle, you know, you're trying to have all these hands and trying to be everything to everyone. And it's not possible. I mean, it's very
hard.
difficult. And I remember, you know, as a single parent, I only had 2, not 4 kids, but when my kids were really little, they shared a bedroom, and I would read to each of them, you know, while they were lying in their bed. And we would take turns on, you know, whose bed is Mom going to lie on first, and then you go on to the other.
Right.
But then arguments came up sometimes, like, it's my turn for, you know, Mom's supposed to be first with me tonight. And I would be like, so, and you know, trying to like split yourself in two and be everything, you know, to them. So I remember at one point, so they had twin beds. I pushed them together, and I was lying in the middle, and I just read the book.
That's awesome.
So that's what we did every night after that, and they were happy with it. So I think you just always have to just be creatively thinking, you know, how can I solve this? And and how can I meet both of their needs? And you know,
and remember, I think we've talked so much about like positive thinking and positivity and returning to that and social emotional learning. I think for us to be able to say, for you, Jessica, to be able to say, I'm doing a great job.
Yes.
You know,
I did
much good
time.
today.
Yes.
You know, my kids have a roof over their heads. We fed them today. Like, there are so many, we can beat ourselves up for not being there for them, but we need to think about, I mean, I'm joking about food on the table and stuff like that, but I think what you have is enough. And you need to remember that, Jessica. Like,
I think, like, you know, we all have that guilt of like, are we doing enough? Are we being a good parent? Are we being a good teacher? Are we being this? Are we being that we're not taking care of ourselves sometimes?
If you're even asking these questions, you are doing a great job.
Yes. And so, yes,
absolutely.
because you care about that.
Yeah.
But I think like taking care of yourself, like even if like, you know, she's lying in bed before she goes to sleep every night, you know, what did I do today? That's a great job as a mom.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that kind of thing, just a positive thought before, because I'm sure there are many things throughout the day.
Yeah. Just what went well today?
What went well?
You know?
Yeah.
That's actually a question that I have started asking myself, and it has to do with Weight Watchers. So I joined Weight Watchers in January. They're not an affiliate of the show or anything. I've really gotten I've had a really great experience with them. And as I said earlier, September's been a really rough month. I haven't been able to drive my kid to school. He goes to school 45 minutes away each way. You know, it's 45 minutes. And I thought I was going to be the one who was going to, I've been in training all summer, like lifting weights and exercising and stuff to be able to do this. And the tendon disorder that I have is preventing that. And so we've had to scramble, and I feel like a terrible mother, and it's just been so frustrating. So, you know, no surprise, I've put on some weight. I've put on a couple pounds. And last week I was trying to think of like, how do I reverse this trend? And that we talked about that in the workshop. And I just made the goal of like, well, last week's goal was to celebrate my good choices. Like, so every time I make the good choice, to remember that and feel like I did that and recognize that. But then this week, what I've done is I wrote my goal for this week is to say every single night to myself this week, what went well today? So I think that can be, I don't intend to just use it for weight loss or diet or whatever. I intend to think of it as like, what went well in my life today, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really important. So Jessica, do that too. We'll do it together.
Yeah. It's actually one of the cue cards.
Oh, awesome.
It really is. It's in the processing deck.
In the processing deck. I was
Power
going
of
to ask which
positivity.
deck. That's so cool. Well, Janine Halloran, Tricia Tomaso, it is always a pleasure to have you guys on the show. I'm going to link, by the way, to both of your multiple episodes. Together, you've been on a combined 7 episodes.
Oh my goodness.
Which is just really cool. I'm so grateful to you for being on the show. It's been such a pleasure to have you both.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for listening. You can find the show notes for this episode at weturnedoutokay.com/300 because this was our 300th extravaganza. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at weturnedoutokay. And finally, I have a special thanks to our producer, the man who's made all of this possible, because he's fantastic with audio. We are like using these microphones and stands and all this equipment. Like Ben helped me understand how to make it work. And he's still teaching me stuff today. And I owe him so very much. He is the 22-time winner of the Husband of the Year Award, Benjamin Kolp. Thank you again so much for listening. And we will see you next time.